The leaders of the dictatorship believed that success on the field could help blind their own population, or at very least detract a lot of attention from their own severe misdemeanors. It was also an opportunity to promote nationalism and success under the regime, and to lure many of the ignorant into an even more false sense of security that all was rosy across the nation. This isn't the only time football has been used as propaganda, far from it. We will talk about some other historical events in the upcoming videos. But by its very nature, football brings joy to people and distracts them from the ups, downs and terrors of everyday life. The regime recognised this and so spent about $1 billion to host the tournament, or nearly $4.5 billion in today's money. Did they spend any more money to ensure that they had the cherry on top of the cake? That is referring to Argentina winning the tournament, of course. The answer is lost somewhere in history, as no concrete evidence has been presented to back this up. Still, there have been many claims that the regime went above and beyond to affect the results of the games. It is needless to say they were no strangers to shameless or abhorrent actions. If I told you that the same group of people that murdered thousands were too pure of heart to fix a few games, what would you say? Let's start with a simple one. Argentina always played the second game in their group, essentially meaning they had the benefit of knowing what happened in the other group game and the result that they needed to get afterwards. Even in the last round of group games, which in the modern day are always played at the exact same time to avoid such an advantage. Argentina profited from this coincidental tournament scheduling, and not least in what was essentially their World Cup semi-final. The format in 1978 didn't have a semi-final. Instead, it had a second round of group games, where the winners of two second round groups would book their place in the final. Argentina had to battle it out in the second round group with Brazil, Peru and Poland. Nothing separated the two group favourites, Brazil and Argentina, in a 0-0 draw, and so who made the final would rely on how both teams performed against their other group rivals. As was custom on the last day of group games, Argentina avoided playing in the first game. Brazil were victorious over Poland with a 3-1 scoreline. With this, Argentina went into the evening game against Peru knowing exactly what they needed to surpass Brazil and top the group. In astonishing circumstances, Argentina needed to win the game by 4 goals. To put that into context, on just one occasion since has a team won a game by 4 goals or more to reach a World Cup final. That was the jaw-dropping 7-1 scoreline when Germany defeated Brazil in the 2014 semi-final. Argentina, in the end, ran out 6-0 winners over Peru to reach the home final. Peru had only conceded 6 goals in their previous 5 games, but they conceded another 6 in those 90 minutes against the hosts. Despite the fact that Argentina had a dominant record over Peru, this result certainly raised a few eyebrows. What's your feeling? According to some sources, the dictator himself, leader of the military junta at the time, Jorge Videla, decided to visit the Peru dressing room before the game. Many different stories have surfaced about what was said or done in the dressing room, but none of them suggest fair play. Videla threatened them. Some money changed hands. This is a quote from the ex-military dictator of Peru, Francisco Bermudez. He obviously wasn't in the dressing room that day and has since been arrested for life for crimes against humanity. Perhaps his words shouldn't be taken as gospel, but perhaps he would be the perfect man to know the inside story. One man who was present was Peruvian footballer Hector Chumpitas. He spoke of the dread and fear that spread through the dressing room when Videla entered. He called Videla frightening. In the book Stands Without People, Gustavo Campana details the lengths the regime went to ensure that their fairy tale would be told exactly how they had dreamt it. Regarding the famous dressing room visit, he wrote, "Illicit actions leave no receipts." Campana's beautiful writing leaves the situation very open to interpretation, but it might well suggest one of two things. One, that as claimed elsewhere, the Peruvians were paid their dues to make sure they didn't spoil Argentina's party, obviously under the table without a receipt. Or two, that there was no receipt because illicit actions actually suggest threats or violence from Videla instead of a financial gift. Other rumours surrounding this famous game have come from far and wide. For example, English media ran a rumour that Argentina made a very favourable trade deal to Peru in the aftermath of the game. One that was said to have involved the exchange of resources and the unfreezing of a Peruvian bank account that had been held in Buenos Aires. Others suggested that Peruvian players had been bribed, and in one case that there was a deal done to send Peruvian prisoners that had fled to Argentina back to their home country to face justice. Which of these theories do you find the most probable? Throughout the tournament, Argentina benefited from multiple dubious refereeing decisions, and it seems that there was a palpable sense in the air that dangerous powers were lingering over the shoulders of the officials. This was best described by the Hungary manager, who said, "Everything in the air is in favour of Argentina. The success of Argentina is financially so important to the tournament." These words were spoken before their opening group game. Argentina defeated Hungary in that game 2-1. In Argentina's second group game, they were the underdogs against France, but they won that game 2-1 as well. Dodgy calls were the order of the day, and an anonymous French player has since claimed that after France were denied a clear penalty, the referee advised the Argentinian defender, "Don't do that again please, or I might actually have to give it next time." In conclusion, whether Peru were bribed or threatened before their historic 6-0 result remains unknown. It is an unsupported claim that also can seem highly probable. But when we look at all the on-field events, claims and controversy, it becomes less and less likely that the purveyors of the dirty war weren't also getting their hands dirty to affect the World Cup results. To say the World Cup was rigged might be a little strong, but to remind you what the Hungarian manager said, everything in the air was in favour of Argentina. What do you think? Just under 9,000 Argentinians were officially named as disappeared by the National Commission on the Disappearance of Persons. Thousands of cases weren't reported, and it was common for whole families to disappear too. As the power of the dictatorship began to wane in the final weeks and months before democracy returned to Argentina, many documents and records were destroyed. We know how many more were killed. As can often happen, towards the end of the regime, everything started to go wrong for the dictatorship. The economy was in tatters and public opposition was becoming fierce, to the extent that the junta believed it would be a good idea to invade the Falklands, British-governed islands off the east coast of Argentina. As with the 1978 World Cup, the regime looked to galvanise support with a bold move of nationalism, but in reality they began and then lost the Falklands War to the UK within 2 months. Instead of serving to save the regime, this failed mission only added to their demise. The dictatorship finally came to an end in 1983, when democracy was restored to Argentina. Thankfully, democracy has remained ever since, even if things have been far from perfect. The days of awaiting yet another imminent state coup are gone. In fact, Argentinians refer to Videla's dictatorship as the última dictadura militar, the last military dictatorship. Despite today's well-documented economic struggles, where Argentina is now celebrating Lionel Messi's goals is a very different place to where they were when they celebrated the goals of Mario Kempes. In 2022, the people of Argentina have been briefly distracted from serious financial issues and the day-to-day struggles that come with that. Those issues affect people and society massively. They should be taken really seriously. But 44 years ago, in 1978, the day-to-day risks in Argentina were far more grave, and death wasn't far from anyone's door. How tainted was Argentina's first World Cup victory in 1978? Was this tournament one of the biggest sports washing pieces of propaganda of all time? What do you think? Please let us know, and stay tuned for more incredible stories.